Hello and welcome to the Addicts Anonymous podcast. I'm your host, Jim R. Today's episode 224, and we're going to be interviewing Jasper. How you doing, Jasper?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing well. Glad to be here. Me and you, you're one of our group members come to our Zoom meeting, so kind of know each other a little bit. But
For
let's
sure.
dive in here. Let's get started. Tell me about your childhood and growing up.
Um, I started. I was born around 11 a.m. at Mount Carmel West in on West Broad in Columbus, Ohio. Um, I was told told by my mother I was a chunky kid. Came from the offspring or whatever, and so basically was I was told I was like the prodigal child, prodigal son child or whatever, from basically my entire family or whatever. It's like this is the kid that's gonna go places or whatever. So I have a lot of vivid memories of that. Um
That must have felt like a lot of pressure.
it was, especially when I started growing up, you know. But my childhood started off okay. Uh I started me off not knowing who my biological father was. Like he left when I was born actually, and it was my mom and my aunt who was at the hospital when I was born, and my apparently my aunt was the very first person that carried me when I was born, and so that brought up a lot of abandonment issues like from the jump,
Because
because
of dad
I
leaving.
really had yeah, I had no idea who my biological father was or whatever. All I would hear are stories. Never knew his name, never knew where he came from, never seen his face. There's no pictures of me. There's no pictures of me and him at all. There's no pictures of my mom and him at all. So like I'm very like clueless. He's a very unknown type of person. And so that kind of started off with me kind of, you know, started off with me kind of like not I would say trusting people in a lot of ways. But it started off okay. My mom had me when she was 17.
Oh, she was really, really young.
Yeah, she was really young, and she had to go through trials and tribulations because my grandparents, you know, was very much against me being born. Like they really wanted me aborted. So like that so she was pressured a lot by
When did you
them.
find that? How old were you when you found that out?
I think I was 18.
She's still a kid when you find that out.
Yeah. But we went from place to place. There was other guy who took the fatherly figure wing that my biological father left behind. So we moved to Cincinnati by the time I was like, I think 2 or 3 years old, and we lived with him and his mom. So we stayed there for a couple of years.
How was it
My
living?
mom basically
How
did
was your
was
mom as a parent?
um I see nowadays I look at the way my mom was as a parent differently from when I was a teenager, because I actually had like a lot of amount of resentments from her because I was not raised right by her. I was raised by my grandparents. you know,
how were your grandparents? Were they good with you?
yeah, they were really good with me. They taught me basically all the things that an adult's supposed to know, you know, everything that a human is supposed to know, like wash clothes, iron clothes, clean up after yourself or whatever, you know, taught me how to tie my shoe, ride a bike. I mean, all the things that, I thought my parents would teach me, but in reality, it was more my grandparents who taught me all these things, and had me grow. And so, but like I said, but back to my mom, um, she did what she could for the time that she had me or whatever, because being an adolescent in the 90s, being an adolescent in the 90s was not a it's not for the weak. I'll put it that way. You know,
What kind of things did you go through?
I went through a lot of verbal abuse by her from from the time I was like 17 or 18.
What kind of things would she say?
Like things like, you know, you're not gonna amount to nothing or whatever. And like just spewing how like I was already like by the time I turned 18, I was already on a downward spiral in some ways. I was staying out late, not never coming home, and being out with people who I shouldn't have been out with. So like it the thing about it is that she felt like if she only gave me like food, shelter, and clothing, that I would be me. She was doing her job as a parent, without having that, sincere love and care that all children need to have in order to grow. So
I
but
mean,
like I said,
it's super important. I mean, it can't even be overstated the amount of importance love ties into your growing up. It's either you feel loved or you don't.
for sure, and that's the reason why I resented her so much, like growing up.
Yeah.
Um, so but above all that, I still tried to maintain a good thought process with like being successful the best way I knew how. But but I felt like by the time I turned like 14, I was already falling off. You know, um, my school life was a bit harsh. I was at elementary school. I had an IEP,
What's
and
IEP?
an IEP is like you like having a learning disability, ADHD. So
Understood. Yeah.
yeah, I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 3.
At 3 years old, they diagnosed you?
Hmm.
Did anyone ever tell you what kind of symptoms you were showing at 3? That seems super young.
Like massive hyperness. I was told now when I was that young, I was hella hyper. Like I was extremely hyper. I was going like jumping off the walls kind of thing or whatever.
Yeah.
And by the time I was in elementary school, they were putting me on Adderall. They were putting me on Adderall to like, calm me down from my hyperness or whatever. But the people don't know the side effects of Adderall is like severe depression. So all the things that I found fun, I didn't find fun anymore when I was on on those pills. And so after that, really, again, my school life was pretty messed up in ways. Like I, due to the fact that I had ADHD and the IEP, and also had other things like a skin condition. I have eczema, and also having massive allergies or whatever. I would get made fun of a lot for like my skin being ashy or whatever, things that I couldn't help. You know,
Yeah.
and
Kids could be
things
cruel. People kind of forget that kids could be fucking cruel.
yeah, yeah, I dealt with a lot of that, and so I went through elementary school and past that, then went through middle school, and that was a bit niche. It was hard for me to make friends because I didn't know how to make friends. You know, I wasn't the type of person to come up to you and say hi, how are you, or whatever. I was kind of person in like in the very corner, just drawing. And you know, I used to draw a lot when I was a kid. I used to draw like stick figures and stuff.
Yeah, I used to draw a lot as a kid also. I used to love drawing.
Yeah, I still remember that little thing I wrote was something about, you know, something about friendship or whatever. I forget what it was. My mom still has it in the portfolio of like my childhood stuff or whatever. And so that you that was all up in hand. And on top of that, my stepdad at the time that I was a kid, he was very I mean, he was doing drugs a lot. He was doing cocaine a lot. And
In front
I
of
didn't
you?
know. Say again.
Would he do it in front of you?
I'm not a no. I just actually just knowing about this like a year ago. You know,
Yeah.
but I do recall like him having like mental like manic depressive outbursts, and I would be on the forefront of it and get smacked around for no apparent reason.
That must have been hard.
Yeah, you know, and the reason why I never and the thing about it, I never told my mom about it was because I thought that was just me being disciplined. You know, I wasn't aware that this was not okay. You know, I didn't know the difference. When I was a kid, I didn't know the difference between being disciplined and actually being abused.
Yeah, it's a lot of kids deal with that, I think.
You know, yeah, yeah. A lot of kids do still deal with that kind of thing, and so after that, we went back to Columbus just because she was putting his hands on my mom too,
So
and
she left him?
yeah, she left them. We went back to Columbus and lived with my grandparents for a little bit until she got her own place. And by the time she got her own place, my younger brother was born, and
How much younger is he than you?
um, say say 5 years, we're 5 years apart. I meant to say I do have a younger brother before that. That's 2 years younger than me.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was his dad.
Your stepdad.
Yeah. So like so my brothers and sisters were like half brothers and sisters, different
Gotcha.
dads, same mom.
Yeah, I have a
So
half brother also.
yeah, um after that we went back to my grandparents' place or whatever, and you know, she found a job and she was working at it or whatever. She became a nurse, and we got an apartment out I think out east, and after after that we stayed there for a while, and that's my other brother was born, you know, and took care of him, and we took care of him as much as we could over there. And so like throughout the years I was kind of like very secluded, like mentally secluded in a way because I did not know how to make friends again when I was in school. I was also dealing with a lot of health issues regarding my asthma and regarding my asthma and my allergies. You know, and I was also still dealing with, you know, 88 being ADHD and everything, and also like having a learning disability, which means that it was hard for me to like expand on like different different parts of the curriculum at school. So like I would have like 10 extra minutes of testing aside from the other kids who had a little amount of time had an extra 10, that kind of things, because I didn't know how to comprehend certain things like in an accurate manner. So, you know, so my teachers would work with me every day after school to get that down or whatever. And so um yeah, so by the time I was in junior high, I was dealing I was going through a lot of depression. Junior high I was going through a lot of depression, and the only I felt like the only thing that was making me at the time that was making me feel like I was somebody was music. So I was really attached to early punk music, and so basically early punk music like 80s DC punks, punk bands like Black Flag and Bad Brains. So that's what like cultivated in my head and made me feel like, oh yeah, F the status quo kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like I was in the seventh grade when I was like everyone was like playing like Butch Homie Quan, and I was singing Black Flag songs. You know, I almost got, and that funny thing, I almost got suspended for wearing a Black Flag shirt.
Really?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
um, yeah. But yeah, so my cousins were also in the same school, you know. I was in a charter school in middle school. So yeah, I had to wear like uniforms and stuff like that, even though I barely wore them. So, you know, so all through that, I was also still getting bullied. I was also still going through getting bullied a lot through due to the fact that my skin condition a lot of times at the time, whatever, and that's when like my eczema was getting like flaring up almost on like in a day-to-day basis. And my mom took me to a dermatologist, and they didn't know what to do. All they did was give me like some generic steroid cream, and that made it worse. So I was having breakouts all over my body, and all these kids when I was having these breakouts or whatever, I was having so many kids like make fun of me for it. And like I but like you know, there was like the bullying name for me, the term was Ashy Larry. So
That's terrible.
yeah.
Kids could be so, like I said before, so friggin' cruel. But you look back and that's kind of stuff made you stronger, I'm sure. Thicker skin.
Oh yeah, for sure. I really wouldn't change it in all honesty. Just because, you know, I am where I am now, you know, because of it, you know. So by the time I was in high school, I was in a relationship with this one girl. I think this one girl or whatever. We only dated for like 2 weeks, and that was it. So it wasn't really a relationship. It was just like, let's see how this goes. In 2 weeks, we just cut it off.
Yeah.
And that was around the time that me and my brother was moving from my grandparents' house to my mom's house, like switching and forth because she couldn't financially take care of us. And so after that, so after that, I was living with my grandparents for quite a while. So, and by the time I turned 14, you know, I was kind of already stressed out and upset about a lot of things, especially regarding to like the family dynamics of things. There's a lot of friction going on by then or whatever because of money issues or whatnot. And that's when I first got introduced to alcohol.
At 14?
That's what say again at 14.
At
Yeah,
4, yeah. So young.
yeah. And the very first drink I ever had was a Corona beer, right in my grandfather's fridge, and I drink it in the basement, and I got very hungover within a matter of like seconds, within one beer or whatever. But it made me, it, but the thought process of it was that I felt good, you know, like all that like frustration and stress or whatever that I'm feeling is all gone because of this one beer.
Yep.
Without realizing, waking up, yeah, I have a big, massive migraine. I mean, big and massive migraine. Your stomach hurts and all types of stuff. So like, um, so I think it escalated. I think it started to escalate more and more when I got into a relationship with this other girl. And we were it started off for the first 6 months as a long distance relationship, and it took a toll on both of us. It took a toll on both of us. And then we actually met each other, and we actually met each other, started being more intimate or whatever. And the next thing you know, she ends up being pregnant, and I was not, and quite honestly, I was not quite ready. I felt like I wasn't quite ready to be a father at all. Looking back at it now, I definitely was not ready. But yeah, her parents weren't too supportive through a lot of that. Wasn't really too supportive in a lot of that because like, it's like two kids. You guys are two kids. Like what can you do with what can you guys do with a kid? You know? But but going through all that turmoil or whatever, I was still drinking. I was still drinking or whatever. And I think by the time me and her separated, I was drinking more. But so what happened to the baby is it was a miscarriage, and that took a toll on both of us. It took a toll on both of us. I had a lot of those emotions going through the pregnancy loss thing, you know, and like as her support system, like I really had nobody because I didn't want to tell anybody because I was scared I'd be kicked out for it.
Yeah.
So I really didn't tell anybody about any of that. So um, we were one time it's bound to be engaged, well married. We were somewhat engaged, and after a miscarriage, it took we started to like separate and start separating a lot of ways. Like we weren't being as intimate as much anymore. We weren't being as intimate anymore. We weren't really seeing each other that much anymore. And by the time the miscarriage, by the time like I was a senior in high school, we separated. And so I graduated, I got my diploma, and then I stayed with my grandparents. He stayed with my parents, stayed with my mom, and then I went to Columbus State for like 2 semesters, then dropped out because I couldn't financially afford it anymore. and and that's when a lot of friction between me and her kind of came about because I was staying out late and not really telling her where I'm at or whatever. So that caused a lot of negative friction between one another, between each other. And by the time, um, no, well, she said that by the time I turned 20, she was like, "That's the last straw. You're out of here," kind of thing. And so I was homeless for quite a while, and and by all the me, there was friends that I made that had a good influence, and there was friends that I made that had bad influences. I hung around the friends that I made that had bad influences, and that's when I was first introduced to heroin.
How old were you?
I was 20.
20?
Mm-hmm. And I stayed inside a bando at Parsons in Columbus for about a few months, just shooting up, not having a care in the world, and hoping for some money to get some food in my stomach or whatever or whatnot. But I kind of quit cold turkey, which was a bad move. I should have went to get help at that point. But
What made you quit?
it was I guess it was just the feeling of waking up, just like kind of thing, or whatever. I felt like back then I had the willpower to stop or whatever. Like when I turned 18, I had my very first AA meeting. I went to my very first AA meeting because I tried to stop drinking because alcohol was my very first drug of choice. And before it even started, I walked out because like this is fucking stupid. I walked out and went back home. But so I was introduced to heroin at 20, and looking back at it now, I really don't think it was real heroin to be honest.
What do you think
But
it was? Fentanyl?
yeah, this was like
Dangerous.
2017.
Say again?
This was like in 2017.
Yeah, fentanyl's
So
big. They're
yeah,
putting it in everything.
like I said, I look back at those times and you realize that you realize that I wasn't thinking right, but I was dealing with dealing with a lot of different continental issues, depression and kind of stuff. Like in 20, 2017, I was I was in like 4 or 5 different mental institutions within like 2 months from each other.
What happened that led you into there?
Um, I felt me my depression, my anxiety was like so severe to where I was thinking about killing myself almost every day, and I need to be medicated and go to therapy, which I started doing in 2018. And in 2018, I went to Job Corps in Dayton, Ohio, and got a certificate for surf safe, so like
What's that?
culinary arts.
Culinary arts?
Hmm. And had a job at a bar and grill type of place a few months later or whatever, and by like mid 2019 I quit and found another job at another restaurant. Quit within like 2 weeks because it was very toxic. They were having me do they were having me do like manager like management type of things like my second week there. I was still in the training phase, and they were putting me in like management type of they were making me do management type of things, like make sure this employee does this, make sure this employee stays around for this, or make sure the drinks are where they are or whatever. I'm like, oh my God, you know. So I quit that within 2 weeks, and 2019, I thought my life was kind of getting better or whatever, but I think I was still grieving over my grandparents passing, which they died like three years prior. For me, 3 years prior, my grandfather died in 2015. My grandmother died in 2016. So yeah, my grand when I found out when I when they passed away, they left some of money for my mom, me or whatever. But like, man, I was devastated. Like, I was very devastated, and I didn't know how to handle it. Like, even to this day, I still sometimes still don't know how to handle it. So throughout all that I got involved with a lot of bad people around that time who was like threatening to kill me and stuff,
For what?
like owing them money or whatever for them scamming me. But anywho's, I after that I like post night 29 no around 2020, just like during the pandemic or whatever. I was basically 2020 was not that bad of a year for me. I was basically just on a fence of like hopping, being a job hopper, like hopping from job to job or whatever, trying to keep it. And by the end of 2020, I was in another relate. By the end of 2020, I was in another relationship and moved to my own apartment with two. I had two roommates, and it started off okay. Started off very much okay, we all got along very well. And then by like early 2021, my roommates were constantly like at each other's face with like every little small thing or whatever. And it started building up more and more and more and more and more and more and more to the point where like it was uncomfortable for me to even go to my own house. And so by that time, um, I felt like I was like on my P's and Q's in certain aspects or whatever. And by mid 2021, my relationship was falling off. And by
Relationship with
August,
who? Relationship with who?
huh?
You said your relationship
um,
was falling off.
my relationship was falling off
With
with
who?
this my other ex girlfriend,
Okay.
another ex girlfriend. We were together for I forget like 7 8 months. We were together for about 7 or 8 months. We started well, we started talking in like mid 2020, but we didn't start dating until like August of 2020. And then we broke up around August 2021. So I think that was actually it's basically a year, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's when, and I feel like that's when I started to go back to my older ways when I was a teen or my early 20s by basically self-medicating.
With what,
By
alcohol and heroin?
Yeah. And on top of that, I was also letting in people who were using and drinking constantly or whatever in my apartment because no one else was there anymore. By the time the lease was up, um, I had no idea that I had to make a 30-day. I had no idea that I had to make a 30-day notice before the lease was up or whatever. So my roommate was able to get out there scot free from that. My other roommate, she left in the middle of the lease So that was taking a toll on me because I couldn't financially make my way to pay my rent and bills all at the same time because it was over a grand a month. So I was like very in a bad space, and also at the same time I was also losing friends. They were basically cutting me, but most friends were cutting me off or distancing themselves because I was also at the time of being very mentally psychotic. Like I had a lot of mental health problems were taking place.
What type of
It
mental
was
health
hurting a lot of
problems?
like everyday suicidal ideations. Like in 2021, I was like being put in mental hospitals on a consistent basis. And it started to take a toll on everybody, and everyone just like started to distance themselves away from me or whatever. And that's when I started to really self-medicate and just mind my own business at a certain time. That's when like I started really to isolate myself and be very secluded in my apartment only, drinking up and shooting up. That was the only thing I was really doing at the time. And you know, by I think by November, was once again, doing the same routine or whatever. The only people I let in were the dealers that I was dealing with at the time, and the people who did things like me, who used like me, or whatever. And I had two friends who were great friends of mine at the time, and they were I was letting them use my apartment. And by the time I went back to their hometown, they both died like 2 weeks later.
From what, overdoses?
Mm-hmm. Apparently, it was someone laced fentanyl in their drugs or whatever, and so they like died like instantly or whatever. And I was so high and so strung out to where I didn't even go to their funerals, and their families like blamed me for their deaths, like blamed me for their deaths or whatever, which held a lot of guilt and shame, which made me want to go back, which made me want to do drugs harder. You know, and on top of that, like all these things are taking place and going through a lot of this stuff or whatever. And on top of that, I went through went through a event, very traumatic experience of having like 12 police officers at my doorstep with guns drawn because my therapist gave them the wrong idea that I was suicidal. And so I was basically forced into a mental hospital against my will. So that was very traumatic. The breakup happened. My mom was in the hospital for COVID. Um, on top of that, I was lost my job. So like the only thing really out of that was also I was losing a lot of self will. I really was not. My thought process was that I was really not in a headspace to really feel like I could love myself because the only thing I wanted to do was basically die. That's the only reason why I drunk and used again is for the reason is to like have my life be completely ending. Like I wanted to meet my demise so badly. Like I used to be like sleeping. I used to like lay down on my bed and screaming, "Kill me, God!"
Mm.
Like erase me from this world. I don't want to exist anymore, kind of thing. It's kind of hard to talk about because when I was in that state of mind, like I was using and drinking for one purpose, and that was to die. That would be like really honest here. And think like late December I got my wish apparently from the doctors or whatever back then they said I was dead for 9 minutes. I apparently I OD'd like late December, and they like paramedics, my next door neighbor. No, it was my landlord. My landlord found me laying down or whatever, and called the police, and then Narcan me, and I was just like screaming, why did you let me live? You know, and a lot like basically screaming and crying in tears or whatever. Like it's a very bad time. And then by early January, I was going in and out. I went to Columbus Springs, Dublin, not to detox from drugs, but again from suicidal ideations. And then when they told me that they couldn't like transport me to a different hospital, I walked all the way from Dublin to OSU campus,
How far is that?
like 17 miles if you count the highway too. Because I was on the highway walking down there. But very messed up. And at the same time, I also lost my job. And the story behind that was that I showed up to work. I know called no show the day before. Then I showed up to work high, and unfortunately had a loaded syringe in my pocket, and it fell right through the pepperoni section because I worked at a pizza shop or whatnot. And my boss was extremely pissed to the point to where I almost caught a felony charge. I almost caught a felony charge for it because I was this close. Like she said, you got 5 seconds to get out of here before I call the cops. So like there, so I basically was saved by like this much due to my like I had to like shift quick outside and never come back kind of thing. You know.
Yeah.
So basically it's down to my luck, So I go from Columbus Springs to OSU campus, and the social worker, you know, scant me talks about me through these sheets or whatever, and asks like, are you currently in addiction? It's like, no, I don't have an addiction problem. Well, it says here that you do. You says you had an alcohol problem at 14 or whatever, and I was very very in denial that I had an addiction problem. But then I realized, then she was like very polite and saying, "Why don't you just go to Mary Haven and detox on me?" And I was just like, "I'm down on my luck. I might as well, you know, I might as well." So by I think early February, I was in Mary Haven detoxing for like about 3 weeks, and then I transferred to a rehab called Minerva Park Rehabilitation Center for 2 months. And then after I went through there, I went to the lighthouse, and I stood there from April to August of last year.
Which lighthouse?
The one on Whitehall in Columbus.
What is it?
Lighthouse is a like a sober living,
Okay.
like a sober living treatment center. So stayed there for 5 months, and relapsed in May from perk 30s.
Where'd you get them?
I have still had some left. I just hit it very very well, I guess. But so I relapsed from perks or whatnot, and so throughout my entire like recovery journey, I was very timid and shy and quiet. because I was still kind of like dealing with a lot of things. Plus, I was just getting off Suboxone. I mean, just getting off Suboxone because of all that and stuff. So, after I did all my time at did some of my time at Lighthouse, I went to a place called Hope for Tomorrow, which is the same place where I met our fellow member of Addicts Anonymous, Jordan Nicole. That's where I met her through. And after I got kicked out for Hope for Tomorrow, is because I wasn't filling up my meeting sheets and stuff. So I go to Next Step Recovery, which is on the north side of Columbus. And there was a lot of drugs being put in the house or whatever. And I was at a point to where like I'm trying to get this right this time, you know. And I left there and I'm at Choices, which is the current place I'm in. And I've been there since September.
How do you like it?
Oh, I love it, man. Like I'm in a very good state now that I ever been. I have 8 months and 20 days.
That's awesome. That's a long time.
Yeah.
It's a really
And
long time.
it took it's just a long life journey, you know, because I really for years I really have never thought I would be proud to be clean the way I am now. You know, like back then, you know, I was strung out and couch surfing all over the place. As to where like I'm fortunate to, you know, now be able to I'm fortunate enough to, you know, be able to work, be able to work, and get my peer support certification soon, you know, attend meetings, chair meetings, and work the steps.
Sounds like you're in a good place right now,
Very, very in a good place, you know.
physically and
But
mentally.
yeah, but I look at it this way, like this is why, and this is one of the things that I try to tell the newcomers nowadays is that, you know, if someone like me can get it right and still progress in ways, I guarantee you anyone else can. Everyone else can. Is because my cards were dealt the moment I was born, you know, and there was just a lot of things that I was dealing with that I've dealt with for such a while. You know, I never confronted for a long time. I never confronted those abandonment issues. I never confronted the neglect. I never confronted, you know, the mental health aspect of everything, like the constant ridicule, the bullying that I went through when I was in school. You know, the miscarriage, the breakups, and all these things. You know, I all bottled them in. I was always the person to bottle them in and self medicate. And now, like nowadays, I'm in a headspace where like I no longer feel that way. I mean, I no longer feel like I have to you know suppress anything. And that's one of the biggest key things is that the biggest key things for my recovery is to put it all out on the table. That's how I grow. That's how I feel like I can grow.
Absolutely. I mean, when you're able to talk about your feelings, it's going to help because that's how you get suggestions from other people. Is letting other people know how you feel, so maybe they can help guide you in the right direction. No one's ever going to be able to fix you. That's up to you. But people can give you advice to lead you in the right direction.
For sure, for sure. And you know, you know, I'm a lot more humble now. I'm a lot more humble now, and you know, I feel like that ever since I had that spiritual awakening, because my spiritual awakening came from me being hospitalized for the last time at OSU campus, and like detoxing and actually really surrendering myself into surrendering myself to a higher power, which is my community, surrendering into taking suggestions, and to following, the 12 steps of Narcotics Anonymous, and also in the process of like really growing within myself, but also growing within my community, and I feel like I've grown as a person. I feel like my artistry has grown because that's important to me. I feel like my sobriety has grown, and that's all because I took some suggestions and always doing the next right thing and living life on life's terms the best way I know how. So like I'm very much in a very better state of mind than I ever have been in my whole life, to be honest.
It's great, man. It sounds like you're doing well. I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
So let me ask you one last question. Do you have any advice for people that are watching and listening to this?
Yeah. One thing I would say is recovery is not a race. It's not a race. Does not matter it doesn't matter how long it takes for you to get it right. As long as you get it right, that's all that matters. If you're going through any kind of anxieties, any kind of pain, any kind of frustration, feel like you want to die every day, trust me, I've been through it. I understand. But I feel like we feel like, you know, we can persevere in life if we just take some suggestions. And also on top of that, understand that, you know, there are people out here who are really willing to help you, really willing to make sure that you succeed in life, not just in your recovery, but life. Because the thing about me is that I'm not going to be in this program that I'm in forever. I'm still going to have to live life on life's terms when I'm out of here. And so, like I said, just take your time with it. If you don't want to work the steps, then do smart recovery. If you don't want to do smart recovery, do celebrate recovery. Like get your recovery the way you see best fit. What works for you. Don't like have this don't have this expectation revolving around yourself to where like you end up draining yourself in the process. You just have to take it slow. Slow and steady wins the race, and I stand by that every single day.
That's been very well said. That's very well said. So, before we go, did you have anything else you want to throw in or you want to add in? I think you told your story great. I mean, thank you so much for being so open and honest with us. I know it's not easy to sometimes tell the world about yourself, you know?
Yeah. Um, I guess there's one last thing I would say is that for everybody that's watching, if you are watching, just so you know, you are not alone. You are 100% not alone. I will talk with you all day, every day to help you get you through this. I have social media. You can just hit up, find my name, and we can talk from six in the morning or whatever. I don't care if I have to get up, go to work the next morning. Like I don't care. Like I'm would be more. It would be more helpful to help somebody in those situations rather than just neglect them because of priorities. Because they said in the NA reading, we keep what we have by giving it away.
Yes, very well said.
And yeah, so that's all I got.
Awesome, man. You did a great job. Thank you for coming on the podcast. How do you feel?
I feel good. I
Good,
feel really
man.
good.
That's awesome. So do me a favor, my friend, and sit tight. And for everyone that's watching and listening, if you like what you saw and heard, go below and give us a like. Also subscribe to see when we upload new videos. You can check us out. We're on all social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, TikTok, Instagram. You name it, we're on it. Also check out our website, www.addicts-anonymous.com. There's plenty of free resources and literature. And also, Addicts Anonymous has a book coming out, hopefully due mid to late February. It's called Addicts Anonymous, Our Stories. I write on a number of topics, and then we have a collection of people's stories about their addiction and their recovery. That's all we have for today's podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. And until next time.